The 100th Downing Street briefing, and whether or not did it tell us anything.
There is good news. The infection rate seems to be going down, but what Boris and what the government are trying to do, they should have done that back in March or April. I think now, by having the daily briefings back on, and his message was clear. But when you walk around and you speak to people, or you see people walking around with no masks, it's frustrating because the majority of people, I wouldn't say not the whole country, but there is a minority who don't simply care and are flouting the rules. And the government, the message from government is not getting through to them.
It's also a class thing. Like, a lot of people say when they speak to my mum or they've spoken to me for the first time, oh, you're very well spoken. I'm like, really? Really?
Is there such a thing, Edward, as mug trolling? Because I think that's what's happening here.
Yeah, you know, if that happened to me, I would say politely, thanks, but no thanks. Because at the end of the day, because it's
a decor issue.
It affects your life. I mean, I can tell that you're really being polite. You don't want to say no. You've been offended because it doesn't match the set.
I'm not offended.
No.
I just worry when I take it home and I place it in my cupboard, I'll think, it's not working. It's not working. I can't close the cupboard.
Could you get like a printout and then kind of just put something to kind of match it?
So that it changes. So I actually just put a cardboard cutout of my other mugs, slightly bigger than my usual mugs, but it's fine. But it is very beautiful. But I think I'm being mugged off now. I think I'm being mug trolled.
Yeah, you're going to get
by viewers at home.
See, I can imagine you walking out of your house or your flat, walking up and down your street with the mug going, I don't like this. Don't ever send me a mug ever
I'm not
again.
entirely mad. I just like things to match.
No, but I think when you say
beautiful,
don't
thank you very much.
So the official thing is here, don't send Storm any more mugs.
Well, don't say that. You're encouraging it.
Well, I'll tell you what, we can up the game. We can find out how many mugs you will get in a month. So please,
don't. Because look at the posters.
You're making this worse.
No, don't. That really will be.
You say COVID is minimal.
It is minimal. It is minimal. The COVID deaths currently account for 2% of all the deaths in the country. And let me tell you, Ed, no teacher has
there's
ever...
more lockdowns. Aberdeen, Leicester.
That is not because... Well, let me explain. No teacher in the world has ever been infected by a child with COVID. It just doesn't happen. And what's happening, actually, the unions are preventing teachers from going back to school because they're making unreasonable demands.
You can't blame the unions on this. This is about common sense from people thinking kids may be affected.
How long do you want this to go on?
No, but Carol, you just mentioned about the unions. Let's not bring them into it and drag them in and say that they're the cause of this. But no, it's about common sense. It's about people thinking they don't want kids to be infected. They don't want their kids to bring the COVID.
Let Carol answer, and then I'll bring in Susanna.
No one wants kids to be affected, and it's reckless of you to say that's the case. We have to get this world back to normal.
Vin Diesel is the father of the Fast and Furious family. But a lot of people say that Biggie and Tupac were the kind of the catalyst of this whole East-West Coast beef.
Can I ask, what made you become a vegan? Was it because you're hearing stories like this and thinking, well, my future of meat eating is going to come from a lab? Is that what put you off?
No, I became a vegan for a while. I lapsed.
You all know this year, Christmas is cancelled for 2020, and fingers crossed, hopefully it will resume. It will come back next year.
So I just to point out, that's not an idea I just made up. It's from West End
We're not blaming
trade
you,
bosses.
Don't worry, we're not going to blame you. We're not going to knock on your door and say, listen, you killed Christmas this year. No, we won't do that.
Now, Edwards, you want the word that Miss Morris used to be banned.
Yes.
Well, that's not going to come as a surprise, I can imagine, to lots of people, because, you know, most people won't use it. But banned for everybody?
Yeah, because it's used on radio, it's used as a form of endearment when you speak to people who, hip-hop rappers and people who kind of reclaim or part of street culture, they say, oh, well, look, it's not a derogatory term to use. And it's not the kind of term that I'd like to use in front of my mum or my relatives. So it shouldn't be used at all. Okay. And that's the issue. If you said that on Twitter, you'd be banned. You'd be shut down. Because In terms
I'm
of
a black woman.
It's not about you being a black woman. It's about what you said about white people. So in a sense, you'd be.
I was.
So I'm just trying to understand what you're saying.
I was describing colonialism. I was describing.
What you said, Twitter would shut you down.
No, they wouldn't.
But why should you be allowed?
Because I'm not feeding into a narrative.
We had this debate at the time, but why should you be allowed to express an opinion that all white people are violent racists or have that potential?
Yes.
And yet Britain First, which says that all Muslims are violent people, for example, they're now banned.
Because white people aren't oppressed. I'm not feeding into a narrative.
That's double standards, isn't it? Because
no,
at the end of the day,
because
at the end of the day, regardless whether it's Britain First or you saying it, it's out of context. And
no, not really, because these groups are assembled, these groups are organised to feed into a narrative of this alt-right, this neo-Nazism. This is what they're doing, this is what they're carrying on.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You believe this is censorship and it shouldn't have happened?
Because it's going to push it underground.
It's already underground, though. It's already underground. It's underground and it's over the top. It's everywhere.
I wrote an article about John Holmes, the broadcaster, and it was picked up by someone in Canada who sent me a really vile message on Facebook, used the N-word, swore at me. I reported it to the Met. They traced this individual in Canada and they said, listen, we can't do anything because we don't have the funding, we don't have the facilities.
Right.
And that's the problem. It's going to push it underground. But the underlying problem is, most young people in particular, young boys, do hang out, whether it's chicken shops or other fast food outlets. So how are you going to get the message? I mean, when someone gets stabbed and there's parents on other media platforms, the perpetrators don't watch these programs or listen to the radio. So how else are you going to get the message to them in order to enforce that message and to say to them, put the knives down, make a difference, and do something useful and valuable with your life? And are you Delirious and Raw back in, that came out in the mid-80s.
Big stand-up show.
Big stand-up show. But if Eddie Murphy did what he did now, talking about Luther Vandross having Kentucky Fried Chicken lips and Elvis and... He wouldn't survive. When you were doing Citizen Khan, did you fear that you may be offending certain groups or audiences by some of the content?
Not at all. And the BBC really backed me. I remember we had meetings going, well, actually, we knew that people were going to be offended, but we were just prepared and ready for it.
I've come back to where I grew up, in Kentish Town, North London. I'm going to take you on a journey down a street I know very well. My first stop is a shop at one end of the street where the owner has experienced knife crime firsthand.
On that particular day, I was upstairs having a lunch. And my daughter was in the shop. I heard a commotion, so I came running down and I saw 3 people attacking this person in the shop. Initially, I thought they were just having a fight.
London families who came here as part of the so-called Windrush generation, invited here to help build a post-war Britain.
Arrivals at Tilbury. The Empire Windrush brings to Britain 500 Jamaicans.
But it's not just those from the Caribbean whose British status has been questioned.
I miss just working and having something to do when you get up in the day.
This is Franklin Azolukwem. He's originally from Nigeria. Like the others, he calls London home after coming here with his family when he was 2. But back in 2013, he tried to apply for his British passport and was told he didn't have his indefinite leave to remain and faced the prospect of being sent to a country he has no connection with.
Purple air, can I be your millionaire?